Today on the podcast, I am so excited because I have my own trainer on the podcast. So Chelsea, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
So this is a little bit of a different feel of episode than we've probably done most of, or most people are used to hearing me do on this podcast, because we're going to talk a little bit about you and your philosophies, which we've had so many like deep conversations about, training horses and what it means to be in the sport and like all of the things. But we're also going to talk a little bit about my experience in the last, I suppose, year that I've been working with you, maybe a little bit less than that, because you've really helped me sort of rehabilitate mentally and maybe physically as well. Some of the beliefs that I had around myself and my horses and expectations that I had of those things, that has been really freeing to let go of. And especially because we're working with my horse, who is a hot, sensitive type.
Yeah.
Although I don't think that you would know that she's hot now looking at her, because she's so totally different. So yeah, this is a little bit sort of an update on my riding journey and kind of how you've helped me get there as well. Because I think it's rare to find a trainer that you can have these like deep conversations with. And then it just occurred to me, I was like, we have to record these on the podcast. Like that's what the podcast is about. So like, Why are we not recording these? Because I think that they can help other people too. So first of all, just to give people a little bit of background on you, you had a traditional and non-traditional kind of entry into becoming a professional in the sport. So take us back to your days in Virginia, kind of when you were a young budding professional, and talk to us about sort of the years that followed that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I did the whole like grew up in pony club thing and followed a little bit of a dual path of loving dressage, but also loving eventing and doing both of those as a young professional when I left college. And I moved to Virginia, where I was running a boarding farm, and I was really fortunate to connect with a wonderful client who I helped with her dressage horses, and also she had an eventing horse that I was moving up the levels as I was doing my own horse as well, and some other clients. And this particular client built a farm and asked me to come in as the lead trainer and farm manager of that space. And it was amazing, like the most beautiful facility you can imagine, all of the things any horse could want or need. And I mean, how lucky was I as a young professional to have
that? It's like every young pro's dream.
Holy cow, unreal. And really quality, lovely horses and a wonderful human being to work for as well. Like the dream, right?
Amazing. Yeah. Had it made.
Yeah. And I was, kind of chasing my own competitive goals, like wanting to be recognized in the sport of eventing, wanting to move up the levels, wanting to, get as high as I could and as far as I could in the sport, competing against, all the top professionals now that are often doing around the world, and doing a really good job, having a really great time, and having a lot of inner conflict about how I was spending my time chasing that goal. And I think that all kind of came to a head when I was trying to move this woman's lovely mare up the levels, and we got to her first training level event, and she wasn't ready, and I just really wanted to move up, I pushed, and she got scared, and she didn't get hurt, but I did. And I pushed harder than I should have for both of us. And it was a really like eye-opening moment, because the mare really trusted me, and then I made mistakes that made it so she wasn't happy in her work. And that I like could have gotten way more hurt than I did.
Yeah.
And it really rocked me, and it really made me think like, whoa, this is a huge disconnect between like how I want to be working with horses and the way I want to be relating to them on a day-to-day basis, and even in the hard work, how I want them to relate to me, and like that juxtaposed to the way I wanted to move up the levels and excel personally.
Yeah.
And
So tell me a little bit about like what, you mentioned that before you had this kind of turning point that you felt a little bit of an inner battle about how you were spending your time.
Yeah. I mean, I like horses are the only thing that keep me like I love enough to want to do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was young and working for a woman who, could do what she wanted to do with her finances.
Wait, can we pause?
Yeah, of course.
I'm getting is there a dog running around or something?
She stopped. She was scratched.
Okay. It was loud.
Sorry about that.
Okay. That's okay. Just kind of start from the top of your sentence again.
Yeah. So, I was in a really fortunate position to be working for someone who could do whatever she wanted in terms of having built her career and built her life in a way that she could play in the ways that she wanted to. Mm-hmm. And that was lovely. And at the same time, I wondered how I would feel if at the end of my life, what I had done was work for this woman who was just the best human being, but also like, how much was I giving back to the world? I guess was my real conflict. Like, I loved the horses and I loved the business and I loved chasing my goals. And also there's part of me that felt like it was also very selfish. Mm-hmm. And like, it didn't, like, what was I doing to help people in horses? Especially once I got into that position where I was like, I made a bad choice for this horse and I didn't make her life better, and I recognized, I think in that moment, especially how much emphasis I was putting on winning and being recognized as my I don't know, mark on the world. And I didn't know that was okay. Like I didn't know if I wanted to go 30, 40 years in the business and feel like that my competitive achievements were what I left behind.
I think it's so fortunate really that you had that moment early on enough in your career that you could pivot, because this is the trap that I think so many people fall into. And the more that, you and I have conversations and I do this podcast and I'm in this space and I, help create content and tell people's stories, the more that I constantly wonder. And I had this like very long conversation with a close friend about this weekend, which I was telling you before we, started recording. The more that I wonder, like, if we mentally take this ladder climb and the competition piece out of it, asking ourselves what we're left with, like, what are you really getting to, like the epicenter of what you're doing and why you want it. And because there is nothing wrong with competing. Like, obviously
I love it. I'm a very competitive person.
Right. We're both sitting here. We're both super competitive people. And I think it's a wonderful way to showcase the progress that you've made with your horse. But I think that the problem is sometimes, and I am 100% guilty of this, as are you, as are probably most people. Sometimes that gets twisted and we put getting to the next show or getting to the next level in front of what our core values are as riders. And that's essentially what you had, this butting of heads between your goals, or kind of what you thought your goals were, and your core values as a rider and a horse person and a human being.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I think at that point, I didn't even really know. I was so young. I was in my like mid 20s.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't even really know what my core values as a human were.
Mm.
But I was like,
but you knew what they were.
I knew I was conflicted. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I knew I had to look, like I knew I had to try to figure it out. And that if I didn't, I would be left wondering if I had missed something.
Yeah. So then what happened?
So then I really, like, I think for me, the biggest, now when I look back at it, I can see a much larger conflict there. But in the moment, my conflict felt like I put all my self-worth in how I did at competitions. And so I really like felt the urge to understand myself, like what is being human and what is ego and what is, this life for. These were like huge existential questions to be asking as a 20 something. But it led me to like start reading a lot of books, and start looking into a lot of philosophical ideas. And it led me towards Buddhism, and a meditation community that happened to be local to where I lived in Virginia. And it led me on some retreats that just like shook my foundation, like totally and completely.
Was any of that familiar to you in any way? Was that something that you'd been exposed to as like a child, or did you have friends that were into it? Because
no,
I've expressed this to you, that I think it's so interesting to talk to you about. And I've been in therapy learning about acceptance, following my own postpartum depression, and a lot of what, as I understand it, a lot of what Buddhism teaches you is acceptance.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting to have these conversations with you, because it seems so foreign to me, but I'm kind of like, oh, like that's an interesting thing to bring to the table here. But how did you kind of become aware?
I mean, it's so odd, isn't it? Like horses weren't part of my family life. Buddhism was not part of my family life. I think I have some distant relatives that are a little more in that, in that vein of thinking, like a great aunt who spent a lot of time in Japan and was into Zen Buddhism, but she lived on the other side of the country, so I didn't have a lot of exposure. Right. My mother was really into like Native American cultures, and like did a lot of, reading and thinking along those lines, and like nature played a huge role in my life. But it was never very specific. I do remember having some books on my bookshelf by like the Dalai Lama that my family, like a couple family members had given me, and they were kind of where I started, like, this has been sitting on my bookshelf, maybe I should read this. And I do, like there are a lot of therapy modalities that do really tie a lot of Eastern philosophy into the work, and it's because it's useful. It's not religious, you know what I mean? It's like a way of understanding yourself in the world that helps you, I think, move through it in a more even keeled manner, like accept, right? And like I think I've been exposed to that a little bit through in college, and but it's all very ethereal, nothing really solid in that. Yeah.
And so the meditation piece actually got really big for you.
It really did.
Talk about that.
Like I jumped in, like I went to a retreat. I think it was like around my 27th birthday. I think it was that weekend. And I left and I was like, the world literally looks different. Like it was the craziest experience of my life. Like the same road I traveled, the same town I had been in looked like somebody, I can't even describe it. It looked like somebody had painted over it, and it was just a whole different,
like better.
Like I was seeing it for the first time. Like, like fresh eyes. I know, like it like literally gives me like the jitters when I think about it. Like it was so it was like nothing I'd ever experienced. And I realized it was because I was coming from a different place. Like I had I really, this is what I know it is now. I had gone from being so wrapped up in my own mind and my own thoughts and my own perpetual, like habitual conversations, and the practices that I did at this retreat shook me out of that space. And they left me like open and aware of what was actually happening in front of me. And it was like, whoa, there's a world right here happening that I didn't even see
It's
because
like
I
that
was
idea of
so
like
internal.
listening to listen, not listening to respond kind of thing. But
Yeah.
like if you make it 1,000 times bigger, that's what that
Yeah.
sounds like to
It
me.
is. It is. It was like recognizing the expansiveness of everything around me. Like my world had gone from this to this,
Yeah.
you know? And like it was wild. And I was hooked. I was like, my fiance at the time was like, you joined a cult. What has happened? Like he was, he was terrified.
Also,
And
I do want to just like take 1 second to just say that like maybe we've sort of like taken a deep dive into like this like very alternative like way of thinking.
oh
But the
God.
thing is that I went like a few months of knowing you without having any idea that like any of this was part of your experience, because you are the most like down to earth, not culty
Thank you. Thank
person.
you.
So, like, I think that that's partially like what fascinated me so much about this part of your experience and about who you are as a person, because I think that sometimes when we're introduced to these concepts that feel alternative to us, we're met by a person who feels alternative to us.
Yes.
And you don't.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that this was part of your thing at all until, I don't know, we started talking about it somehow or another.
Yeah.
And I just, so like,
yeah, thank you for saying that. Cause I do think that
you're
that's
almost
important.
like a great ambassador for it in some
well,
ways.
Thank you. I hope so. I actually, I want that. Like, I want that. And I know now, like for a long time, I was like, this world, the meditation world and my horse world, they feel so separate. And I don't know how to bring them together. And like just over time, they just melded.
Yeah.
And they are super connected. Like I can't even extricate what I do now with the horses from this other part of my life. Like it's completely tied in. And I remember desperately wanting that to be a thing, because I could feel, like I didn't know how, but I could feel that that the work I did with the horses and the work I do with people with their horses would benefit so deeply from that connection between those two worlds, you know?
Yeah. And at that point, you know, I think we've started to have some of these conversations on this podcast that meld those things, two things together. And like, I would say that like Tick Maynard, who actually is how I got introduced to you, he's somebody that like a little bit has those types of conversations as well. And so they're happening more and more, and they're happening in other spaces too. I'm not trying to say that it's like just here, but they're happening more and more. But at the time, there wasn't really like a framework for how to do that.
And I didn't know enough at that point about horsemanship. Like I knew enough to get me to be very competitive in my sports, because like I had some basic things I would do with all my horses that set it apart from what I think a lot of other trainers were doing. But I didn't know enough. Like I didn't know enough about how horses learned and about how people habitually react to the way horses react, and like how people internalize their stuff. Like I just didn't know enough. And the more I know, the more I learned in both of those areas, the more it came together.
And then there was a time, and I'm not sure when this time was for you, but there was a time where I think life happened and you kind of stepped away from doing the horses full time.
Well, it was right after that pivotal moment, really. Like I that feeling of like, am I going to be happy having done this for 30 years? Am I going to feel like I've done enough for the world? You know, I think that's one of those, it's such an interesting thing. It's a little bit of a cliche area that the Eastern philosophy stuff goes into, which is like selflessness, like this feeling of only being of service to others. And I think that I a little bit took that to the extreme, because I felt like I had to, like I felt like I needed to change things so much to understand myself differently, and that I felt like things were like I needed to change everything to come back better, you know? And so, and it happened to be at the same time that I was going to be getting married, and I ended up having children. And so I basically stepped out of the horse world as a professional for almost 10 years. But I mean, I can't say I only did the non-professional thing for about a year, because I couldn't live without it. Like I moved away from Virginia. I moved away from that amazing opportunity. which was like, it's crazy to think about it now, but I had to. And I stepped into social work. I stepped into working with young women with like co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders who had children. So in like a whole group, I know.
Goosebumps again. Oh,
whoa, it was crazy. And like it was a place I had never had really a lot of experience, and like I jumped in, you know, and what I learned was that everything you do that involves other people is hard. Like the therapeutic work I was doing with these women was not different than the therapeutic work I was doing with my writing students. Like
oh my gosh.
it all connects. It's humans. It's just humans,
Yeah.
you know? And I think the huge benefit for me during that time was, like I said, I had children and I ended up doing a lot of parenting education, and that work ended up being incredibly connected to the Buddhist work I do too. It's so crazy. Like it all just connected, you know, understanding how brains work and people learn, and how to use compassion and care in ways that actually help. Yeah. So yeah, it's just been, sorry.
There's a cat making an appearance. Which kitty is that?
This is Molly. She's our house cat. She's just gonna
she's like, have some compassion for me and feed me.
I know. So anyway, yeah, I did like a 10-year stint, but during that 10 years I was stepping back into the horse world too. Like it all I couldn't live without it. Like I tried. I went 6 months, no, not even. And I was like, nope, can't do it.
Yeah.
And I just started catch riding. And then people at that barn were like, this is different than what other people here are doing. And it just kind of snowballed from there, you know, and I just took it slowly and ended up where I am now with my own farm.
Yeah. Which is wild. And I think that when I remember that when I moved to Maine, without like trying to not like dox myself, like tell everyone exactly where I live. But when I moved to Maine, because I have previously lived in Northern Virginia, Middleburg, hotbed of all the amazing trainers. Then I lived in like the Gladstone, New Jersey area, hotbed of all the amazing trainers. And due to my husband's job, we moved to Maine, and I remember thinking, that's it. It's over. Yeah. That was fun. And I mean, I used to show every weekend, like the whole thing, like you know, I remember when I was working at a previous job in Northern Virginia, I would go ride 2 horses at 5 a.m. before work.
Dear Lord.
Go work all day, would work out on my lunch break. And then after work, would get to the barn at 6, ride 2 more horses, and go home at 8 p.m. And like it's just, and all of that, I say that because my life looks so different.
Oh, now. I hear you.
and both realities are beautiful and have their own gifts, really. Yeah. But I say that because you have to understand that where my mind was is that even if I have my own farm with my horses in my backyard, I'll never ride with that intensity again. Like, when am I going to ride 4 to 6 horses a day again? And so I did have this moment when we moved to Maine where I was like, I'm going to do what I can, like, and dabble. And the problem is I had a horse that you can't dabble with. There's no dabbling or like kind of playing around or just doing what you can with a horse that how would you describe that situation?
Yeah, I mean, she's so sensitive, and she's so like, she's really reliant on her person for how she feels about her life, you know, and she's not a like dip your toe in and step back out kind of girl. Like, she needs a She needs a stability there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was not working. It wasn't working that I was riding here at my farm without a ring by myself with no one here except for
I kind of can't imagine that. Like knowing her now, I'm like, whoa, that does not seem like
it was
a
scary.
good plan. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it was scary. And I can do that with my gelding.
Right.
I think that there are horses that you can do it with.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know that I would necessarily recommend riding by yourself, but so anyway, so I think Tick is the one that introduced us.
Right.
And
Yep.
It was very clear to me. I think that first phone call, I was just kind of like, look, I'm going to level set with you. I just had a C-section. I just had a baby. I have a horse that I have no business with or on or around right now, who totally, like, I hate to say has my number, but that's kind of the only thing that's coming to mind right now.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Because I don't think horses like take advantage of us
right,
in
right.
that
No,
way,
for sure.
but she
you guys
intimidated me.
Yeah, you were stuck.
And there was so much baggage with this horse. And I think that that's something that a lot of people who are listening can probably relate to, is when you have had good and bad, but sometimes mostly bad experiences with a horse, you feel so strung out in your own emotions and stuck, and like a ship that is so far out to sea that you can't see the shore.
Yep.
And I don't think I portrayed it to you as desperately when I first had this phone call with you. I was like, yeah, I have this horse. She's like kind of difficult, but like, you're not going to have a problem with it. Because I have ridden her with a lot of other very amazing, very accomplished people and trainers. And I remember specifically, there was one she's an Olympic judge. She's absolutely amazing. I think the absolute world of her. And I said to her, what is this? Like, what is the problem? Like, will you please tell me if I don't have the skill to ride the horse? Like, I'm okay with it. I'm open to receiving that reality check, because I need to know what I've got on my hands. I need to know what my next move in this chess game is.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, I really don't think that that's the case. And I don't think she was wrong. I think that the problem is that it was the mental and emotional.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't have to deal with this horse. And I still think that I'm very much working through it.
Yeah.
And that was the first time in my entire life, in my 20 something years riding horses, that I realized that those two things can be in conflict with one another, or that if you don't have one, with some horses, it doesn't matter how skilled you are, or, how good of a seat you have, or it doesn't matter.
No.
And with this horse has been such a splitting of the earth for me.
Yeah.
Because she has caused me to reevaluate what I'm doing, and like how I'm doing it, and how I'm approaching her, and like how I'm and that causes you to question how you're approaching so many other things in your life. Right.
Yep.
And so it wasn't kind of until I came to you that I really understood how if this could be rehabilitated, essentially. Like, okay, so I know that I maybe have like the physical skill to do it, to train this horse and to ride her and to do whatever she wants to do. But I don't have the mental and emotional balance or space, or just the way that I was coming to her was with all of that baggage.
Yeah.
And that's what the issue was. Yeah. And so I think you probably see this a lot. Like, I think that this is probably not a one-time.
No, it's human
scenario.
It's human. It's human versus horse. like humans and horses just exist in such a different way in the world. Like,
so what do you, when you see the situation happening, how do you take stock of it? And like, so for instance, like it was a little bit of a different situation for me because I had a very young infant on my hands. And so she came to your farm to be like fully immersed in like kind of your program. And really because I needed to be away from her. I had postpartum depression. Like I just was not there. I was not there. But when these situations come up where you have, a rider who's capable, but there's something holding back the horse and the rider, or there's some sort of like, there's an issue there, but it's not like a concrete, tangible, like training thing. How do you approach it?
It's so interesting because I see it all the time. Like, I think that there's a place where people rely on the idea of technique and the idea of like a process, and they expect that will get them through. But they haven't learned how to actually read a horse. Like, they haven't actually learned how to be present enough in themselves to be present enough with their horse to then actually read where that horse is at. Like, they're treating it like a machine that if you push these buttons, this will work. But they don't even recognize that they're missing stuff. Like, they literally don't even know that there are things that they're missing. And the problem, I guess, the two options there are that the person wants to know or they don't. And not everyone does. Like, sometimes I have people come to the farm and they want me to help them fix their horses, but that's not the problem, like you're pointing out. And they aren't open to the idea that there are things that are different than what they thought they'd be coming to learn. You know what I mean?
Meaning what?
Like, they don't know. Like, I have some people come in, they're like, I want to work on, my horse's connection and staying stable in the lateral work. And they can't lead their horse without the horse running them over. They don't see the horse's anxiety when it walks in the ring. They don't see the horse's anxiousness in the bridle. Like, they don't notice that there are like 5 missing foundational pieces, and they're not interested in knowing that. So if I say, you know what, we're going to actually take 10 or 15 minutes and just do some groundwork, they're like not into it.
Yeah. But because that doesn't seem performance based or performance driven, or it doesn't seem like it's going to have an outcome that, again, getting back to that ladder climbing idea, like, are we losing the forest for the trees kind of thing?
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
I think that's what infiltrates our minds when we're, I think, brought up in this traditional system of riding where going up the ladder, gaining more skills that are physical,
which are necessary,
biomechanical skills,
which are necessary.
Totally.
Yeah.
But when that is the checkpoint that's the only checkpoint. Right.
For
how you're progressing.
And then there are some people that walk in the ring and they're like, like you were completely open to what needed to happen to make it better. Because I think, like you had been describing, you were kind of at a place where you're like, I don't know what else to do. So whatever needs to happen, we're going to try. Yeah. And that kind of openness is what leads to progress, And I think, it isn't, I never compromise on what I see from the horse and like what I'm reading from the horse that needs to happen. I just don't. And sometimes that means a person they're not into the work and it's not what they were looking for, and that's okay. But I've come to a place in my own work that I just don't compromise on that. Like, I'll have people come for a plan. They're like, I want to work on jumping, and we literally work on groundwork and mounting.
Yeah. You're like, first, your horse has to stand still for you to get on and not like launch away from the mounting block. Like, let's address that first.
Yeah. And I've gotten to a place where like, that's, I'm just not going to not do that.
Right. Yeah. It's not part of your sort of program.
Well, it's me balancing like my beliefs, like it's the balance that I was missing at the beginning of this saying that I was missing when I was younger at the beginning of this conversation. You know, like I want to align the work that I do with the horses with the beliefs I have about how we should.
Yeah. With these hot kind of sensitive horses, I'm just going to call them sensitive horses.
Yeah.
I have one, you have one who are actually very similar in some ways, which is part of why I think you were when I brought my horse to you, it was like I could see in how you were with her that there was almost like a recognition that you were like, totally. I've seen this before and I know what's going on here, like immediately. And that was so shocking to me because I was like, I've trained with like all these amazing people and like everyone has told me she's really difficult. She's going to always be really hot. She's going to always be really sensitive. This is a horse that you need to keep busy all the time. Like you can't ever let her have a break in your work because the second that you give her a break, her brain is going to leave the ring and you're never going to get it back. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that I heard that keeping her on the hook all the time is what was going to keep her engaged. And this is something that I'm in the process very much of learning with you, is that keeping her on the hook all the time is part of what was the issue.
The problem. Yeah.
Talk about that.
Like, well, for her specifically, and I think with a lot of these sensitive horses, like, because there's anxiety about their behavior, we tend to micromanage them. We tend to like want to make sure nothing ever goes wrong.
100% the case with me.
Yeah. And so then the horse never has any responsibility because the handler is always controlling the situation. And so I think with Ellie, she didn't have any responsibility for her own reactions or emotions. She was always looking to her person to tell her yay or nay. And I think she wants that in some ways. Like she wants the affirmation, like she wants a leader, she wants a person, she feels connected to her person in that way. But rather than wanting like someone to be like, now do this, now do this, now do this, she wants someone to say, you're good. You're fine. Like there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And she didn't know that. Like she didn't know that there were times where she just didn't need to do anything.
Yeah. And sometimes what that practically looks like is putting her, like getting her in the balance that you want, or, the way of going that you want, the rhythm you want, the frame you want, blah, blah, blah. And then when she's there, leaving her the fuck alone. Because I was always in a mindset of preventing. And I think I bring this up. We're talking about me, but I think that this is really, really common. And we did an episode about like what kind of communication style you have with your horse, whether you're a partner or a dictator or a leader or whatever, or a passenger or whatever. And oh my God, the number of messages that we got after that episode where it was just like, people were like just floored that it was being communicated. They were like, I've been kind of brewing on this, but haven't had a name to call it, or I haven't ever heard it articulated. I think that this is common. I think that this is something that a lot of us are kind of like waffling with.
For sure.
And that is like really not knowing, because most of us are never taught. I think that this is why the word feel seems so elusive, because that's really what a lot of this is.
It is
feel. And that's why it's like, oh, it's like you either have it or you don't. I 100%
you can learn
disagree
it.
with that.
I 100% disagree with that.
Yeah.
You can absolutely learn it.
I think that a lot of people don't know how to teach it. And that's why it's like, oh, you either have it or you don't. It's so elusive.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just the idea of knowing when to put pressure on your horse or when to set boundaries with your horse and then leave them there and allow them to make a mistake is a difficult one. And I found that I was so in the mindset of, I got her where she wants and I have to prevent her from falling out of that. I have to prevent her from falling back on my inside leg, or prevent her from falling on the forehand, or
so you're always guarding, like you're always on guard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that turning point, on most horses, I could do that, or I wouldn't have to do it as much. But on this horse,
felt
I
like you had
think
to do it all the time.
I felt like I had to do it all the time. And she's the horse that caused me to re-examine.
Yeah.
Essentially like the way that we train our horses, which is how much are they responsible for and how much are we responsible for?
Yeah.
And it has to be 50-50. And for me, I think it was 90% me, 10% her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have a horse too, who came to you with some anxiety and some nerves, and even for you, it's taken a good bit of time to get him over that. So like, just talk a little bit about how, I mean, when your first horse first came to you, I think, didn't you just do groundwork?
Yeah, for like 2 months. Like, I think I sat on him just to like feel him walk and move, but like then I was like, yeah, nope. You know, like I could just tell he was so worried and like so anxious, and so like I didn't know him well enough to know what that was about or where that was stemming from, or like what to I just knew we weren't in a hurry, you know, and like the more I'm not in a hurry, the faster I get places I want to be. And I just feel like that's a lesson I've learned over and over and over again with horses and with people and all of the things. Yeah. And so with him, I just really took it slow. And like he came to me at a point where I had figured a lot of things out because of prior horses who had some of those things that I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to go looking and I had to figure out a different way to be with them because what I thought would work wasn't working, you know. And I've always had sensitive horses. I just think like certain riders just have like certain riders can ride sensitive horses even if they don't know all the ways that they're able to do it pretty well. And I was just one of those riders. Like I could ride sensitive horses, but I didn't know why. And then there are ones that are sensitive to a point where you need more, like you need information and you need to understand the why. And I had to go looking for that because of the 2 horses I had prior to my current horse. And and so when I got him, I was like, you know, I've learned I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to take my time. And it doesn't mean I don't have days where like I have to set really clear boundaries and where I have to, you know, like I don't tiptoe around my sensitive horses by any stretch, but I know when to step back and let them be responsible and feel good about the thing that they've done. And I know when to step in. And it's that like balance of being 50% ready to do something and 50% ready to not at all times that I think is like a really important learned skill, and like reading the situation to know when those moments are. They happen so fast, you know? Yeah.
But I also feel like when you step in, when you're dealing with a sensitive horse, it's with a certain level of anti-intensity.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a practice. You know, I was going to say this earlier, and I'm glad you brought it back around. Like when I started meditating, you know how hard that was? It was awful. Like nobody is good at it. No one, because we just aren't. Like no human is really good at just sitting still and doing nothing. It's not what we know. And it's not actually what it is. It's actually like a practice of redirecting the busyness in your mind. Like it's just it's a practice. And learning feel with horses is a practice. It's not like you either do it or you don't, or you have it or you don't. It's like it's a skill, and you have to be diligent in the way you practice it, in the way of any other skill. Yeah. And it just happens to be particularly difficult because it means you have to do the same thing you do when you meditate, which is like slow down.
Yeah.
Stop.
Or like accept that sometimes the best solution is to just sit there and do nothing and wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
When, practically speaking, when are those moments on your horse? So when you really sit there and do nothing and wait.
I think the place where I really do nothing is when they've done a good job. And this is interesting too. So many people use this technique, especially in the Western world, in the horsemanship world, of like when you go like neutral. A lot of people call it neutral. Like when you go limp, when you just relax, your horse should just go like, and I'm done. Like we've all seen those cutting horses that can just like blast into a ring, do their job. The rider goes, and you're done. They drop the rein, they slouch a little bit, and the horse goes,
they're like asleep.
Yeah. And that is a skill that every horse should have. And that ability to like notice when your horse has done a good job, like even if it's in the tiniest little way, and then you just take all the energy out of your body, that needs to translate into them going, oh, I get to let all the energy out of my body too. And I think practically speaking about that, the win is whenever I've asked for something small or large, asked for anything from my horse, and they've attempted to do a good job at it. And that moment of doing nothing could be like 2 seconds, but it also could be 10 minutes. And it just depends on a lot of factors, like how much I was just asking, how much I was expecting, how long we'd been working at it. There's a lot of factors that go in, but the practicality is whenever I see a horse try, there's a moment where I just do nothing.
We had an interesting moment, you and I, a couple of weeks ago, where, I mean, full disclosure, I'm in my second trimester of pregnancy. So there are like some other considerations. And
I know what you're talking about.
But so we had like done our thing, we had ridden whatever. And then there you have a track, like a half-mile track that goes kind of back in the woods. And you would just put some jumps out there, and my horse had not seen that the jumps had been put out there before. So she had walked on the track a few times, but hadn't like seen all of these new spooky jumps. And so you said, let's just like do a little walk and talk and go on the track. And she started to get very nervous.
Yeah.
And
she,
very
grew
spooky.
6 inches.
Yeah. Everyone knows that feeling where you can like feel their heartbeat under your leg, and you're like, whoa, I didn't know I had a 16.3 hand horse. Okay. I don't remember who said it first, but we were like, okay, I'm just going to hop off.
I said, if you want to get down, get down. And you're like, no, I'm fine. And then you're like, no, actually I'm going to get down. And I was like,
17 weeks pregnant or whatever.
Yeah,
and then I had this moment that I was like, it's not about me.
Yeah.
And I should get down. And I mean, it's not about me, as in it's not about, it's about the safety of the baby, and it's also about the horse.
Yeah. And
I'm not contributing positively to either one of those things, putting myself in a situation where if she does something unexpected, like, I don't want to be tumbling to the ground.
Yeah.
So I got off, and you're like doing some groundwork with her, blah, blah, blah. You just like, we just kind of continue on our walk. And I am like, we get like halfway around the track, and I'm like, I just want you to know that I'm like really mentally struggling with the fact that I got off.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? Like, what's the problem? And I was like, well, I was taught and like raised on the idea that like, you always stay on your horse. You never get off, because the second you get off, they're rewarded for the behavior of getting nervous or spooking or whatever. Yeah. And okay, I just want you to give me like a little bit of the spiel that you gave me, because I think that this is something every rider needs to hear.
Yeah. I think I basically said like, well, first of all, just in this conversation, I can feel that same person in me that was like, oh, you screwed up at the horse show, failure, back so many years. And it's that same feeling of like, I am sucking because I didn't do it. Like I didn't finish the thing I had planned to do.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I guess I remember saying to you, like, whenever you're training the horse, like doing the best thing for them and you in that situation is still training the horse. Like you got off of her and we didn't stop working with her. It's not like she like got a cookie and like went to bed, like she had to look at the jumps. She had to walk in a respectful way. She had to, I still worked her. Yeah. I just worked her without putting myself in danger or you in danger.
Right.
And like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think it's such a funny thing that we we have this like idea of we have to get it done in this very specific way. And it's almost like there's bravado behind it. Like,
Totally.
you know, and I just feel like
it very
why?
much, I think, comes back to that like hospital or get back on kind of mentality where it's like,
I just think that's crazy.
it's just, it's not even like just crazy. I'm learning it's not productive.
It's not productive.
And I want to just also like add this in. So I, last week was editing Ian Miller's masterclass. Ian Miller, 10-time Olympian. I think he knows what's up. And in one of the lessons, this made me think of this moment that you and I had. In one of the lessons, he talks about how part of your responsibility as the rider is to really look at the horse that you have on that day, in that moment, in that environment, in that situation. And it can be different all the time. And he says, if you're looking at your horse and you're like, that's a little sketchy.
Get on.
Maybe I'm going to put him back out in the field for another hour, eat my lunch first, whatever, do a little groundwork first, do a like proper beneficial lunging session, not just spin the horse around and around in a circle. But he talks about that. And I was like, y'all, hands to Jesus. This is Ian Miller saying that if you're getting sketched out by your horse's behavior before you even get up to the mounting block, don't get on.
Or if that happens in the middle of a ride, like if you're in the warm up and the water truck comes, don't be like, I gotta stay on because get down and do some work with that horse to help it settle. And I think like what you're pointing at is the fact that you knew your anxiety in that moment wasn't helping her feel less anxious.
Right.
But when you got down and I was just holding her and I'm not anxious, like I don't care if you're worried, be worried about the jumps, that's fine. And then she was able to settle because like from the ground, I wasn't worried. So she could tune into that and that helps. There's not a human up there that isn't worried when the horse gets, grows two hands and feels like a bomb ready to go off. I'm sorry. Like, even if you're the best bronc rider in the world, like there's anxiety in that.
Thank God too. It's like what keeps us safe.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, it's human, like neural synapse from development that keeps us alive. That's why that's there. And so, heed that, but then use skills that you've hopefully attained to help your horse do a better job with their own mental state, It's all training. Like, it's all training.
Yeah. And then another, I think muscle that you have sort of learned to develop and flex in yourself that makes that allows you to bring such a different approach to these hot and sensitive horses is that you're able to, and I think it's probably because of your meditation practice and how deeply rooted that now is into like your biology really, is your ability to get back to that neutral energy very, very quickly. So it's not that you never get nervous or anxious or worried or kind of like a little bit like WTF, like what's going on here. But it's that once that moment is over, you can access that neutrality in a way that is you can kind of fully get back to that. And I think that that's another thing that I think that we can highlight when we're talking about sensitive horses. Yeah. Is that if you are not getting back to that neutrality, they're never going to totally let go of that anxiety. So it's not that, just talk about that. Like, it's not that you can't ever put pressure on a sensitive horse.
Not at all.
But it's that you have to, once that pressure is off, you have to get back to zero.
Yeah. And I think like you watch the best riders and horse handlers in the world and you think, oh my gosh, their feel and their timing is so good. That's what you're watching. You're watching them put the amount of pressure on that's necessary quickly, like they're not tiptoeing around it, and they're immediately loosening or releasing that pressure when the horse gets it right. And their emotional state doesn't change in that process. Like that's the thing that is so important. Like, I'm not angry or upset that I'm having to put like 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 pressure on a horse, or a 6 or a 7. It doesn't worry me or upset me or anger me, I just do it. And then when they give me what I'm looking for, or like try to give me what I'm looking for, being able to release that pressure in that moment, again, without emotion, is where the learning happens. And it's where you can put the pressure on, but then the horse can relax the second they feel that pressure release. And they learn that, they learn that relaxation is where they want to hang out. Like, that's actually naturally where they want to hang out. They want to hang out where there's no pressure. So they seek that place. And if you, like you're pointing out, can go back to that neutral really quickly, then they catch on really quickly. You're like, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. And you have to do it, ad nauseum.
So many times.
And with a horse like yours and like mine, like, there are some horses who you do it 10 times and they're like, got it. There's some horses you do it 100 times and they're like, I got it.
But is it really going to be there the next time?
And that's who she is. And like you, with those types, you have to just be so diligent and so patient, and you can't have an agenda. And like, it's slow gains and it's small gains, and that's it. And that type isn't for everyone. Like, I've had a lot of students actually with this type, and they feel that kind of personal sense of failure when they can't make it happen. And what I've said to them is like, it's not a failure. It's just like, you don't get along with every human, like there are some people whose energy does not match your energy, and you can't hang out and have fun. And like, for the adult amateur rider, this should be fun. This is, you're not trying to like go to the Olympics. You're not trying to prove a point. You're trying to have fun. Like, it's your relaxation. It's your escape. And if that what you're doing isn't fun, then it's okay to let it go. Like, it's okay. It's not a failure on either part. You just don't mesh. But I also think that some of those riders, what they have learned is that what they thought was fun isn't where the fun actually is. And that, like, slowing down, stepping back and playing with their horse in a different way is actually really fun. Like, the goal that they had isn't where the fun now lies,
But I think that happens when you are able to let go of the ladder climb.
Yeah. You have to let go of your idea of success.
Yeah. And that, I also think that happens in certain environments when you're around certain people. I think
100%.
I think that these light bulb moments can happen in an environment like yours, because you're sort of, you're the leader of the circus. And you're sort of saying, all of this is what is okay. And you are also a reflection of that, in that you think about your career as a professional rider differently than a lot of people that I even have on the podcast, where it's not about, that idea of success is different. And it's not that you're not extremely competitive, and it isn't, I wouldn't even say it's in conflict with your competitiveness.
No,
it's just it's like a different worldview. And this is something that actually you talked about in that exact same ride where I got down, where we were walking back and had this moment of like, just talking about like those old beliefs. That's like an old story that we keep telling ourselves that doesn't apply anymore. That doesn't apply anymore. Just like you had that moment, luckily early on in your career, where you realized like, this isn't how I want to do things, and this can't apply to me anymore. How do you sort of balance? I think this is a great way to sort of close out of the podcast. I'm interested to hear how you balance your competitive goals with this approach that you don't always have to be going somewhere kind of thing.
I think that my competitive goals have shifted from wanting to be recognized for getting to the uppermost levels to wanting to be recognized for doing a really good job with my horses and my people. you know, like, and like the horse I have now, he's so cool and he's so talented. He's not a world beater, but he is pretty special. And who knows how high we're going to get, like level wise, who knows? But I'm also like, I'm not in a hurry, you know? And like, so my idea of success now is like when I go to a horse show and we're just like just moved into novice, like we're running novice, and he's settled into that world so well in his first season of competition. He's such a good kid. And I get off cross country and I take off his bridle and we walk back with just the reins around his neck. And he's like at my side and he's happy and he's licking and he's chewing. And people are like, whoa, that's success to me. Like that way that horse is in that moment is a success to me, you know? And like the way my people handle their horses at the horse show, that's a success to me. The way that they keep their energy at an even keel, or they read that they need to go do groundwork in that moment. Or like when my riders come into the ring for a lesson during the week, and they're like, you know, this is what I'm feeling from my horse today. I think we should focus on this. And I'm like, boom, when they wouldn't have done that, 6 months ago. I just like that to me feels like a huge success. And that to me, that feeling of like, oh, if I work in this, for this amazing woman at this amazing facility and I move up the levels, will I feel like I've left a good mark on the world? Like that. Now I feel like I have that answer. Like, I feel like I don't care what level I end up riding to in the echelons of eventing or dressage. Like if I leave a bunch of people with a better understanding of themselves and their horses, then that's a really good mark. It's a really good,
That's gorgeous.
Makes me a little verklempt.
No,
that's me up a little bit.
That's beautiful. Well, I have so much gratitude for you. And sort of like you have entered my life at like the hardest point that anyone could have entered my life. And you are another person who I'm so fortunate to have in my life, who's like making me realize how much you don't know. Oh, and I think it's so important to have those people in your life, like have people in your life who approach life and training and whatever it is, whatever area of life it is, that approach it with curiosity. And I think that is really the heart of what you do, is you approach this professional riding career with curiosity instead of like ferocity that like you're just like chasing the next thing, and your horses and your people benefit deeply from that. So from my heart, thank you so much.
I love that. That's such a nice way to put it. And that's so funny. Like that's a way that people talk in the meditation world a lot, is like, be curious. Don't be goal oriented. Just be curious. See what's there. And that's something I've really tried to bring into my life in general. So thank you for articulating that and like noticing that. Like, that makes me feel really good.
It's literally what this podcast is about too, because I have so many questions. So I just want to like, just put a little teaser out there. If you are listening and you are into what Chelsea is saying, you will be, I can't like blow the lid off of it yet, but you will be hearing more from her, which is, I'm so excited about. And then also if you want to, learn a little bit more about Chelsea and sort of her approach, she has some blog posts on her website that I think are really, really beneficial. There's actually one specifically about riding hot and sensitive horses that I think that if you have this type of horse, it would be a great read for you. So you can go to her website at chelseacanedy.com and connect with her on social media as well. So Chelsea, thank you so much for coming.